So we have a nice cameras here. It's all recording 4K quality, and we have also hypothetically imagine for a moment that we have a time machine just on the street, a DeLorean.
Yeah.
And you can set any time you want in the past. It's not working in the future, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it's working in the past. So what date would you select?
I don't know. Actually, I really couldn't choose any specific period. I would like to, if I have a time machine, actually, and if it's out there on the street and it works, why not use it to like skip through time and visit different periods of time? Because really traveling through time and visiting different eras of human development and the development of civilization, I think that would be really fascinating to kind of see if our understanding of history as it is now, how it compared to the reality of living in those times. Because I think often we see the paintings, we hear about the battles, we hear about the kings and queens and stuff like that, but I think the life of the common people and the people who lived day to day in that era, I think that would be really interesting to see, because it's not something that we have that much feeling with.
You could have a lot of directions, because you can choose nice historical events, but we had a lot, but also you can go to maybe personal level, or you can go to just dates which are interesting in history. Maybe if we can do that, and we are just coming back with I don't know, 2000 photos, did it really change the history books, or it just a kind of addition?
If present times show one thing for certain, is that facts, and certainly facts coming from just one guy coming back in the DeLorean saying, like, look, I took real photos, that people probably wouldn't believe them, you know, they would say, oh, it's really nice AI generated photos, or yeah, right, that's like they landed on the moon, and that's they have photos from that too, and it's not true. So I don't know what the impact would be on our perception of history.
So let's talk about Meemoo. Meemoo is a Flemish institution for archiving since 2020 and support cultural organizations for digital archiving. Originally there were other organizations, VA, PACT and Lucas, and merged. But what is more interesting, that you have 8 million objects, newspapers, images, sounds, videos. So it's really a lot. Do you also collecting from institutions? I mean, newspapers and TVs, and also from people just from the street. If I have if I found something from my grandmother's heritage, can I show you?
It's important to remember that we have a collaborative model. Basically, we are not the ones that collect the heritage material. We don't make the judgment call and saying like, this is something we want to keep for the future. That's our partners doing. So there's archives, musea, even media companies who are saying like, this is something we are putting in our archive. And instead of all of them having an archive infrastructure and an archive, all of them separate, we're just saying, no, let us take care of it for you. So we'll make sure that it's safe. And it's also really nice that we have all that content together. So maybe we can do interesting things with that amassed content. What we count on them for is really selecting that material, because it's impossible for us as one organization to be knowledgeable about everything there is in the world, you know, about the independence movement of Belgium, for example, or the recent history, to colonial times, to scientific information, to media. So those are all separate areas. There's people who are experienced in building collection and selecting and also valuing collection, and saying like, well, we now have, I don't know, 500 images of weddings in Flanders. We probably don't need 500 more or something like that, you know. So to have an image about what is a representative collection, what is an interesting collection, it's not just keep on piling the content on, but really making selections and saying like, is this a representative image of our history and of reality as we know it.
Should you collect all things? I mean, if
No.
I have okay, you have 5,000 weddings. That's very nice. But maybe the 5,000 and first wedding is
Really interesting.
really special.
Or really special. That requires you to define what is special or something like that. What do we already have and what do we want more, and to have some kind of a collection plan. That is something that we count on our partners for. Just like this is the area of our expertise. This is what we want together. And so then if somebody comes to that organization and says, here's another, I don't know why we're stuck in wedding photos now, but if somebody says, this is an interesting video or images, are you interested? That they can make the balance. So yes, this is special. This is something we don't have yet. Or no, this is something, well, we already have many images of. So we won't be taking that into collection. Collecting is not about gathering everything. What is the challenge though is that sometimes you need the perspective of time to evaluate if something is relevant. Certainly for digital collections, this is a challenge because the digital material is very ephemeral. It's fleeting. So what we need to do is have a big enough cross-section of content, and then maybe in 20-30 years we will look back and say, well, this is a part that we don't need anymore, and this is really interesting information. So it's really more about a process than it's about determining at a certain point of time that this is valuable, not valuable. I think opinions about that can evolve.
Of course, I'm interested in the technology, and in the just right behind you there are many interesting archiving tapes, Betacom, cassettes, DV-com,
They're not actually archiving tapes, they're old tape formats. Part of the origins of Meemoo was the realization at a certain point that especially audiovisual carriers were in real danger of disappearing, basically, because often if you ask a vendor and say what's the lifespan of a tape, 20-30 years, but a lot of the audiovisual carriers are already much older than that. So to safeguard all of the information, all of the content that's on those tapes, a little bit more than 10 years ago, the Flemish government decided we need to move, we need to take some action. And that's where then via now Meemoo was born, and with the mission to say, okay, instead of everybody taking care of their own content, which is really inefficient, let's build one organization, and they're going to pool all those tapes and types of carriers across organizations, and then we're going to the market and we say okay, we have 100,000 quarter-inch tapes. Who's interested in digitizing that? And these are the specs that you need to respect to digitize it, and that's how we approach it. So we built really a kind of a project and logistical approach for digitization across organizations, more than 180 organizations now, and to have better and cheaper results. That's the idea that we have. And once they're digitized, then you're faced with the same questions. How do we store all that information? And that's the second part of our activities. It's really about safely storing all that audiovisual information and other digital heritage material as well. Also really building again a solution that's available to a wide group of partners, and that's also very difficult for them to build on their own, because if you're a performing arts organization and you have 2 people on staff, then the odds that one of them is a digital expert with knowledge about digital archiving is really low. And it shouldn't be, they should be focused on performing arts, basically. But that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be good that somebody takes care of that digital archiving part for them, and that's what we do.
Yeah, that's also hard for me. I'm just a person who working with 6 cameras and generating a lot of data.
Yes.
Basically, I just buying the new hard drives and external drives and just put it on the shelf.
Yes.
But maybe if you are an expert on that, what is the most efficient way? What should I do if I have more data?
First, a disclaimer, I am really an expert on nothing. So I have a general knowledge about everything, but I am an expert on nothing. So let's disclaim that first of all. But luckily, there are experts. First of all, it depends if you're an individual or if you're an organization, or an organization really that's also focused on archiving as one of your main activities. You will probably make different choices for
but maybe I'm just a gallery. I'm doing pictures on an opening.
Yeah.
I'm doing pictures of the artworks,
Yeah.
and then I put it on my laptop. But if I lose my laptop, then all gone.
Yeah.
So people, what they saying that first of all you need 2 copies and diversify it in the space.
Yeah.
Put it in your mother's house or wherever.
We have a website called Tracks that's more in the performing arts, but it's really accessible to, let's say, non-specialist archiving organizations, where you can read some basic guidelines on like, how do I take care? Because it's about more than just the storage of the material. For example, how do you remember where the material is, on which hard disk, for example? So if you have a lot of content, if you like 5 movies and 3 photos, that's not an issue. But as the content multiplies, then you're going to try to remember on which hard disk did you park which photo, and if you have 15 or 20 or 50 hard drives, then it's going to be a mission to find out where it is. So metadata is important, multiple copies, but also checking those copies. It's really more about a process, because even if you store it on a hard disk, but if you leave it in your mother's cupboard or attic for 15 years and you never check it and you assume that it's safe there, it's probably not going to be, because maybe there's some heat, maybe the roof leaked a little bit, maybe it was a really cold winter and it froze.
Yeah, but it's also about the cost impacts.
Yes.
Because if I put too many data on the cloud, I need to buy space there.
Yes.
If I need to archive in a hard disk, I need to buy a hard disk.
Yes.
And all of this.
So but the cost is a factor for everybody. That's why selection sometimes becomes important. So at a certain moment, you will have to take the trade-off. Is it worth for me as an organization or as a person to keep all that information, or and so do I pay? Every organization, has to pay something, or do I make some selections and say like, well, it's been 15 years. I haven't looked at it in 15 years. Those 4 video streams of Nico saying his stuff. Maybe I don't need all of them. Maybe the final edit is what I need.
I'm not good on it. I have to tell you, because
you're a digital hoarder.
No, I'm also an analog. I collecting books, art books, newspapers, a lot of things. I just love it. I have this kind of nostalgic feeling that
it's difficult because we migrated or digitized about 500,000 tapes and other formats to digital. As Meemoo, what we do is we collect the physical tapes from the different organizations. We deliver them to the digitization company. They digitize it. We receive the digital file. The tapes, they go back to the original owner, and it's the original owner who decides what to do with them. Throw them away, keep them. A lot of people keep them. The quality it's not going to get any better, over time, and sometimes it fills up rack space and stuff like that. But saying goodbye to that material, to physical material, it's not always easy.
Let's talk a little bit about the time evolution, because I remember my grandmother had some contracts, paper, in physical paper, had some photos, like 20, really not more.
Yeah.
And stored just on the cabinet somewhere. Was really not a big
shoebox,
shoebox or something. But now everyone has a mobile phone generating terabytes of images because, hey, I just met you, let's take a picture. I'm going to Ghent, what an interesting city, why don't take a photo and everything. So in this meaning, it's really like an expansion, explosion, it's a lot of data, and every day is getting bigger and bigger. So you mentioned that we should select something, but even if we select, can we reach a kind of economic level?
It's going to be really difficult. It's going to be a different process because I think 500,000 tapes, that sounds like a lot, but basically that's really okay over a period of the past maybe 50 to 100 years. That's not a lot of content. It's what's left, basically. It's what survived, or it was what was kept by professional archives. So that's what we had. So selection there was a challenge because sometimes people didn't have the players anymore to look at what is on the tape, so they can only view it again in a digital format. But even then, you know, the amount of content was not gigantic. But now, as you say, suddenly we are going into the generations where people will have at the end of their life might have petabyte range if the quality of our video and the amount of photos that we take and the amount of data that we ship from place to place keeps on increasing. So where in the past archives basically on like a box level or on the level of files, that won't be possible anymore. We will have to have, I think, some kind of maybe an AI assisted way of working where there's some pre-processing and it says like, well, you know, these are, for example, very private photos of you and your family, for example. This is interesting, but we are more interested in your professional work. So we're not going to keep all that data, but we're going to keep your professional work, for example. As the digital amount of content explodes, our approach and process of building collections and choosing and selecting and valuing collections will have to change as well.
But let's talk about another thing, which is metadata, because you mentioned that already, and I think it's very important and interesting that how can we select and label the content, because it might be very subjective.
It's always subjective. Even AI is subjective in a sense. It's AI bias is a hot topic. Contextualizing it is really important. Also saying like this is something added by a human, and it was this human in this context who added the metadata. For example, if it's your pictures and you say, oh, this was me and my aunt Julia in Crete the summer of 22. For example, you know, and you say, okay, this is metadata added by the original. Well, if I will describe it and I see this photo, maybe I will add another context. Maybe I will be interested in the building that's on the background and say, oh, this is a really good picture of the temple of whatever. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I added this temple and it wasn't that at all, for example. So knowing who is the source of metadata is important, but also, for example, if you do an AI process, for example, it's also a possible source of good information, but also a possible source of bias and a personal view.
I went to hetarchief.be site, search for Luc de Vos, singer, and I found 417 pages of results.
Yes.
I clicked on an interview, but there was an error message because it might be a content which is not allowed me to watch. But in this case, how should I use this site? What I should looking for?
As I said, we've digitized, and our partners have digitized material, or they have a digital born material, and it's all that material that we have stored at Meemoo. Of course, we want to look at ways of making it available to different groups of people. But certainly for the AV material, almost everything is still in copyright, just because of the time frame and our copyright laws. We wanted to give people the possibility to see like what is in those archives, even if we can't see it right now. Maybe we can search, and we at least we know that there is, for example, an item about Luc de Vos in that archive, and maybe in that one, and maybe that media company has something. So if I'm a researcher, or if I want to do a documentary, or even if I'm looking for, I don't know, did my grandfather do something? I know he was in Ghent or something like that. Can I search for his name? The start also of contacting those different organizations. But because what we do is, it's not really what we say. It's not an error message that you get. It's an information message saying like, this is in copyright. We can't show you this material free, but we can guide you towards the organization that has it, and maybe you can visit them and see it there, for example, because there's an exception in the copyright law for that. Secondly, what we also do is saying like, okay, for education, for example, there is also like a copyright exception there in the classroom. It can be used. So we have an educational platform called the Archive for Education that has about 27,000 videos and video fragments and audio fragments made available for the classroom for students.
You also have a museum archive, online collection platform.
Yeah.
And show artworks from Museum of Fine Arts, Antwerp, Ghent, Bruges, Leuven.
Yeah.
But I think it's a bit different from the tapes and sounds,
Yeah.
because then you really need good quality images, I think.
Yeah, well tapes, then we're sometimes limited by the quality-wise. We're sometimes limited by the quality of the recording in that time. So if you have a tape from in the 1960s, if the audio quality is bad, it's not going to get any better. For artworks, we have actually two sites, Vlaamse Kunstcollectie and artinflanders.be. And for artworks, there's a lot of great artworks in museums, but also in churches. And if you can take a photo with the right lighting and on a higher resolution, then it really comes to life again, and it becomes available. And also because there we don't have that many copyright issues, especially for things from the Renaissance or the Middle Ages or whatever. We can share it, of course, with the permission of our partners.
I'm still wondering and still looking at amazing these differences in Belgium on the Flanders side and the Wallon side.
Yes, it's very complicated.
Complicated and different. Do you have maybe connections with the, because I think you have regional funds, and,
yes,
and it's not a country fund, let's say. Do you have maybe connection with the Wallon side? I
think with the Walloon side, not that many. We do work together with a number of, let's say, the more federal institutions like the National Library or Cinematheque, who does a lot of the movie archiving. They have a lot of historical material, but they still also gather a lot of the digital new productions. It's really a movie archive, to put it that way. So we do collaborate with a few of them, but as you said, it's a different structure we work.
Thank you very much for the discussion.